staying with us to continue to break down back in Iowa now with this case. Those are some pretty damning statements that were made by the defendant in this case. Do you think that those are going to hurt the prosecution not being allowed into evidence?
It all depends. It all depends on what else is being allowed in. But I mean, legally, if he's not properly Mirandized, which is what I understand, and also he's a Spanish speaker and he wasn't provided with an interpreter, then these statements should not be allowed to come in. Now, would it be better for the prosecution if these statements come in? I think that's a given, and that's pretty obvious. Of course, it's going to be a lot easier to have, it's basically a confession. He leads them to the body, and he's giving them detailed directions to the specific location of the body in the cornfield. And only a person who's either committed the crime or witnessed it or has seen where the body is would be able to do that. So it's pretty damning evidence. Is it going to hurt the prosecution? It may or may not. It all depends on what else they've got. And it looks like they've got some forensic evidence of the blood in the trunk. So there's some other evidence here. Of course, like I said, it would have been better for them, but legally they can't use these statements.
Right. And so there's been some chatter about, I don't understand, if he said it, it should be allowed in. But let's talk about the importance of all of our constitutional rights. And he has a right to be Mirandized if he's arrested, saying that he has the right to remain silent. Anything he says can be used against him. And there's also a right that that be said in a way that the person can understand. So if they don't speak English as a first language, there are ways to have interpreters, translations to ensure that they actually understand the rights that are being told to them. The fact that he's undocumented does not mean that he has those rights here in the United States, correct?
Of course, it doesn't take away his right to be Mirandized. He's a defendant. It doesn't matter if the defendant is legally here, is undocumented, is a citizen, is naturalized. None of that matters. Every defendant, regardless of their immigration status, constitutionally has a right to be Mirandized. And that's all it is. I mean, it would have been such a simple thing for them to do. Bring in an interpreter and Mirandize him properly. And then right away, they could have started questioning him, right? Because I've seen it happen in a lot of cases where the investigators or the detectives Mirandize the defendant or the suspect, and right away, before even asking him anything, right away they just start asking him about, waiving his rights. They just start asking him, questioning him about the case, and that's all it takes. Just say it, and then you protect the sanctity of the statement. But if you don't do that, that means you didn't follow the law, and automatically the court has no choice but to throw that out.
I absolutely agree. And everyone's rights need to be protected. There are laws that need to be applied for a reason. So certainly agree with you. His constitutional rights are to be protected. And if they're not, that's the reason some of the evidence is suppressed. I do want to now, I really appreciate the Court TV team because they have put together a list of physical evidence that will be allowed. It has not been suppressed, meaning the jury can hear this if it's properly introduced by the prosecution. One is the forensic results of the autopsy of Mollie's body, and the forensic results should tell us, for instance, cause of death, manner of death. The second is Rivera's statements that could be also used to impeach him. So even if some of the statements are suppressed, if he tells a different story, if he says something different than what these suppressed statements say, those can be used to impeach him, to show the jury he's not credible. He's saying this now, but he said this before. Do you agree that suppressed statements could be used to impeach? I know that's what the judges ruled, but are you in agreement with that as a defense attorney?
Yes, I mean, that is the law. If he takes the stand, if he decides, I am going to take the stand in my own defense, and he tells a story that's contradictory to some of the things he has told law enforcement, well, I mean, then it's fair play, right? They should be able to bring in his prior statements to impeach him, to show that, look, jury, he told us something completely different. So, and you need to know this. The jury's going to make a credibility decision, right, about this testimony by the defendant. And I think it's crucial for them to see any contradictory or inconsistent statements that he's made outside of the court.
And again, these are all the rules of law that the court has to apply that govern trial proceedings that are standard, typical in all trials. And then the jury has to make a decision on whether or not they will convict. We're going to switch gears now, and we're going to bring up next California versus Robert Durst. The defense and state argued over delaying the trial of Robert Durst, scheduled for 5 months to start today. We're going to take a listen to the final moments of those arguments